Hello, my friends. I am Antonio Carlos, and today I'll guide you through a story that many still swear was born of strong prayer, while others believe it was nothing more than love pushing through the walls of the old slave quarters. But let me tell you this, nothing here begins where you expect. Everything started with silence, a silence far too deep for a newborn child. Santa Beatriz plantation stretched like a green carpet at the foot of the mountain range, its coffee rows aligned like soldiers. The big house stood tall, breathing pride. There lived Senora Mariana, wife of Coronel Damasceno, a man of cold eyes but a reputation for being fair within the harsh rules of that time. When their first daughter was born, there was celebration. Yet days later, all joy faded. Baby Beatriz did not respond to sounds. She didn't cry at thunder, nor flinch when a door slammed. The Senora noticed first but hid it from her husband, afraid of how he'd react. The coronel despised weakness. Among the enslaved women, whispers spread. Some said there was something strange around the child. Others claimed it was destiny's doing. Among them was Rosaura, a young enslaved woman with a calm face, known for her skilled hands and a quiet faith inherited from her African grandmother. Rosaura was the one who watched over Beatriz in the afternoons, while the Senora tended to the plantation's affairs. One day, while rocking the girl near the window, Rosaura sensed something unusual. Beatriz stared into the empty air, as if something invisible called to her. The stare wasn't blank, and it was too deep. Rosaura leaned in and hummed a lullaby. Nothing, not even a blink, only silence. The news spread through the slave quarters before the Senora could even admit the truth to herself. Many feared the coronel might blame someone for the child's condition, and there were rumors, soft, uneasy rumors, that something might have entered the girl during birth, something that didn't belong to the world of the living. One stormy night, while thunder flashed across the sky, Senora Mariana secretly summoned Rosaura. Hands trembling, she begged, "Rosaura, help me. If there's anything you know, a prayer, a tea, whatever it is, please." A chill ran down Rosaura's spine. She knew some old practices passed down through her family, nothing that promised miracles. Still, she agreed to help. Deep inside, she felt the child carried something that needed to be freed. That night, after the coronel slept, Rosaura approached the crib. The room was dim, lit only by the storm's glow through the window. She placed her hands on the baby's chest. Beatriz sighed as if recognizing the touch, and then Rosaura felt it, not with her ears, but deeper, a call, a faint tug, like something trapped and trying to escape. Beatriz opened her eyes, uncomfortable for the first time. Before Rosaura could react, she felt a delicate movement under her hand, as if a small weight were pulling away from the child's body. The Senora froze. Rosaura shut her eyes. Something was about to happen. Wind swept through the window as if announcing a presence. Rosaura slowly raised her hand, but something clung to her skin, as if attached to the baby's chest. The Senora watched in horror and hope. Rosaura murmured old words, half-forgotten ones her grandmother used only in moments of great danger. Lightning crossed the room. In that flash, the Senora saw it. In Rosaura's palm lay a dark fragment, the size of a large seed. Not wood, not stone, but something shiny and oddly organic. Rosaura gasped. It had just come out of the child. Beatriz let out a small sound, the first the mother had ever heard from her. The Senora dropped to her knees, covering her mouth to stifle a cry. Rosaura closed her fingers around the fragment. It was warm, almost alive. Instinct said to throw it away, but her intuition urged caution. Beatriz breathed deeper now, freed from whatever had been weighing her down. "Rosaura, what is that?" the Senora whispered. "I don't know, Senora, but it shouldn't have been inside her." Beatriz turned her head at her mother's voice. Another first. The Senora sobbed softly. Rosaura's mind raced. If the coronel discovered that the child improved right after an enslaved woman touched her and removed something mysterious, things could go very wrong. She could be called miraculous, dangerous for a slave, or accused of sorcery, which could cost her life. The storm rumbled outside. Rosaura hid the fragment in her apron pocket. and begged the Senora to keep the incident secret. Mariana nodded, but fear filled her eyes. The coroner will notice she's different. What do we say? We say it was God, Senora, Rosaura replied firmly. God listens to a mother's suffering. The next morning the coroner did notice. When he set his metal spurs on the table, the sound made Beatriz turn her head. He frowned, puzzled, yet satisfied. He attributed it to natural development, refusing to recall her earlier silence. Meanwhile, Rosaura felt the fragment press against her pocket, as if watching. That night she dreamed of her grandmother repeating, "What you take out, child, must find its place again." But Rosaura didn't understand yet. She only knew she couldn't dispose of the object. Not yet. And somewhere in the slave quarters, someone had already sensed that something unusual had happened in the big house, and that Rosaura was hiding something more valuable and more dangerous than anyone imagined. The fragment hidden in Rosaura's apron pocket seemed to grow heavier each day, as though it absorbed the tension spreading through the plantation. Beatriz's improvement, subtle as it was, didn't go unnoticed among the enslaved women who worked in the big house. And among them, one pair of eyes followed Rosaura with unsettling attention. Sibila, an older woman with a sharp tongue and a reputation for guarding secrets no one dared ask about. At night in the slave quarters, Sibila always sat near the cold ashes of the fire pit, where only the scent of burned wood lingered. She barely moved, as if listening for voices rising from the earth itself. She noticed Rosaura's restlessness, the way she clenched her hands, the way her gaze drifted when someone mentioned the white child, the strange scent that clung to her, something ancient. One late night, Rosaura awoke with a start. A presence hovered by her hammock. She blinked and found Sibila standing there, moonlight cutting across half her stern face like a blade. "You touched what you shouldn't have, girl," Sibila murmured, her voice like dry leaves brushing together. Rosaura pushed herself upright, heart pounding. "I didn't touch anything. I only took out what was inside the child." Sibila leaned closer. "Nothing enters a body like that unless it's been called, and nothing leaves without asking for payment." A chill crawled over Rosaura's skin. "I didn't call anything. I only wanted to help." "Help always has a price." Sibila's eyes narrowed. "Where is what you took?" Instinctively, Rosaura pressed her apron pocket. She didn't answer, but Sibila's gaze was sharp. She understood anyway. "Be careful, Rosaura," the older woman whispered. "Some things, when you keep them, end up keeping you." The warning echoed in Rosaura's mind long after Sibila walked away. Still, Rosaura couldn't bring herself to discard the fragment. Some force tied her to it. At times she swore she felt it beat softly, almost like a tiny heart. Meanwhile, Beatriz was waking to an entirely new world. She turned her head toward voices, smiled at lullabies, reacted to the tiniest sounds. The coroner, proud, began declaring that the girl had finally settled, refusing to remember her earlier silence. His pride wouldn't allow it. One hot afternoon, while Rosaura washed clothes by the stream, Sibila appeared silently beside her, as if materializing from the forest's shade. "More is coming," she said bluntly. "This kind of change never comes alone." Rosaura tightened her grip on the wet cloth. "What change?" "The girl hears now, but she still doesn't speak, and she won't speak until you return what you took." Rosaura dropped the cloth. "Return it?" "Where?" Sibila pointed toward the forest thickening behind the slave quarters. "Where it came from." Rosaura swallowed hard. "I don't even know what it is." Sibila shrugged. "Then learn. When the impossible happens, someone always pays." That night, sleep refused to come. The fragment pulsed against her pocket, as if calling out. And Beatriz, now strangely alert, began following Rosaura with her eyes, even when Rosaura tried to avoid looking at her. The big house grew colder, heavier. Something was shifting on the plantation, but Rosaura didn't yet know who else had already begun searching for the fragment, or why. Dawn arrived wrapped in an unusual fog that settled low over the coffee fields, like a veil hiding what the day did not yet want to reveal. Some slaves whispered that fog like that signaled change. Senora Mariana, however, saw only her daughter, restless, alert, and strangely sensitive to sounds. That morning, while bathing the child, the Senora called Rosaura softly, "Rosaura, she's different today. Yesterday she laughed when my bracelet hit the table, but now she shies away as if afraid. Have you noticed anything?" Rosaura hesitated. "She's waking up, Senora. Her ears are learning the world. Sometimes that hurts." Mariana nodded, though her eyes betrayed deeper concerns. She trusted Rosaura, but knew the slightest hint of strangeness from a slave could become dangerous gossip. And the fragment burned warmer each day, especially when Rosaura came near the child. It wasn't the heat of fire. It was like a pulse, a living echo. Rosaura pressed her hand to her pocket, fighting the unease rising inside her. In the slave quarters, Sebila watched everything from afar. She sensed that the plantation was sliding toward a tide of events no one was ready to understand. Rosaura, she knew, was at the center, fragile, kind, and unprepared. But another set of eyes followed Rosaura too. Tobias, a young enslaved man who worked the fields. He admired her, feared for her, and sensed the danger she carried. When he saw her speaking tensely with Sebila the previous day, he grew even more worried. That night, Rosaura slipped quietly out of the slave quarters, guided by the fragment's insistent pull. The moon lit the narrow path toward the forest. She walked like someone following a faraway whisper. But before she reached the first row of trees, a hand gripped her wrist. Tobias. "Where are you going at this hour, Rosaura?" She startled but didn't lie. I have to take something into the woods." "What something? Does it have to do with the white baby?" Rosaura lowered her gaze. "It does. But I can't explain." He studied her a long moment. "Sebila sent you?" "No. But she said, what I took from the girl needs to go back." Tobias recoiled slightly. "Rosaura, these things aren't to be played with. The woods don't accept visitors at night." "I don't have a choice." "Then I'm going with you." She shouldn't involve anyone else. But fear had been eating at her chest all day. Tobias's presence felt like an anchor. "All right," she whispered. They walked into the forest. The moon cast long shadows under their feet, and the air grew thick, humid, as if the forest itself was aware. Then, just before they reached a clearing, the fragment vibrated violently, so forcefully Rosaura nearly doubled over. Tobias grabbed her arm. "What is that thing doing?" She closed her eyes. "It's calling." "Calling who?" Before she could answer, a distant sound drifted through the trees. Not wind, not animal. A low, drawn-out moan. The forest felt suddenly awake. The fragment pulsed again, and Rosaura and Tobias understood without a single word. Whatever had left Beatrice's body was not done yet. The forest felt more alive that night. Every branch creaked as if awakening, every leaf moved with intention, and the air carried a damp heaviness that seemed to shift as Rosaura and Tobias walked deeper inside. Moonlight filtered through the canopy, giving them just enough clarity to follow the narrow path. But the sensation that something else was guiding them remained strong. The fragment pulsed relentlessly in Rosaura's pocket. It was no longer a subtle vibration. It throbbed like a trapped heartbeat. Tobias, though trying to appear brave, scanned the shadows with sharp, wary eyes. The forest had its owners, spirits, memories, ancient stories, and entering it at night was never done without consequence. At last, they reached the clearing. It lay perfectly circular, the grass low and damp, as though winds had circled there for years. Rosaura's stomach tightened. She had never stepped this deep into the woods, only heard tales of wandering lights, of voices that begged not to be forgotten, of shadows that watched without ever revealing themselves. Tobias whispered, "Is this the place?" Rosaura nodded slowly. "It feels like this is where it wants to be." She took the fragment from her pocket. In the moonlight, Tobias finally saw it clearly and recoiled. Rosaura! That thing looks alive. The dark surface glistened as if coated in something living. Not wood, not stone, something else entirely. Rosaura knelt in the center of the clearing. When I took it out of the girl, I felt like she could finally breathe. But now it wants something, a place, a return. Tobias shook his head. We should tell Sibila. She's the one who understands these things. Sibila understands fear, Rosaura whispered, her voice trembling. I carried hope. I can't let this return to Beatrice. She lowered the fragment toward the earth, but before it touched the ground, a sudden gust swept the clearing. Leaves whirled in circles. Rosaura gasped and pulled back. The fragment pulsed harder. Rosaura! Tobias stepped closer. It doesn't want to be buried. At that moment a sound drifted through the forest, a long, mournful hum. Soft, almost human. Rosaura froze. Tobias gripped the wooden handle of the small blade he carried, though he knew it would do no good. The moan echoed again. The fragment lit up faintly from within, a weak but undeniable glow. Suddenly, visions flooded Rosaura's mind. Images that weren't hers. She saw a woman running through the forest with a baby in her arms. Heard men shouting in the distance. Saw torches, fear and desperation. The baby's cry drew danger closer, forcing the woman to hide the child inside a hollow trunk. Then, in a moment of pure terror, the woman placed her hand over the baby's chest, leaving behind a piece of herself, a last attempt at protection. The fragment was that, a shield, a memory, a ripped-out piece of a soul. Rosaura gasped as the vision vanished. Tobias. This came from someone, from a mother. Tobias paled. Rosaura, put that thing down, but she held it closer. If I let it go, it'll return to the girl. I know it, I can feel it. Tobias stepped beside her. Then what are you going to do? Rosaura exhaled shakily. Call for the one who lost it. The words came to her unbidden. Ancient syllables, familiar yet foreign, remnants of her grandmother's prayers. Rosaura murmured them softly. The clearing seemed to lean in to listen. Even the wind stilled. Then something answered. A whisper, everywhere and nowhere at once. The fragment glowed brighter, illuminating Rosaura's hands, and slowly, at the edge of the clearing, a shape formed. A woman's outline. Bent. Fragile. Made of light and shadow. Tobias stopped breathing. Rosaura clutched the fragment to her chest. The figure stepped forward. The figure drifted toward them like a memory that had refused to fade. She did not walk. She hovered, weightless, her form shifting between shadow and faint light. Every movement stirred the forest. Branches groaned, the air chilled, and the clearing itself seemed to bow to her presence. Rosaura couldn't move. Tobias stayed rooted at her side, fear tightening his jaw, though his instinct begged him to flee. The figure paused before them, leaning forward as if studying their faces. Then Rosaura noticed something that stole her breath. The spectral woman held a baby in her arms, or rather, the image of one, shimmering like smoke. The sight pierced Rosaura's heart. Tobias, it's her, the mother, or what's left of her. Tobias refused to look directly, but he stayed with her. The figure extended a hand, translucent, trembling, toward the fragment. Rosaura opened her palm. The fragment flared, warm and aching, as if recognizing its true owner. The spirit touched it. A wave of wind crashed through the clearing. The earth shuddered. And in that instant, another memory swept through Rosaura's mind. Not brutal, not violent, but filled with despair, love, and sacrifice. She saw the woman hiding her child, saw fear closing in, saw the last touch of a mother determined to shield her baby from a world that offered her no mercy. Then the vision faded. Rosaura's cheeks were wet with tears. She left this inside Beatrice as protection. Senora Mariana said the girl was born during a storm near this forest. She must have come into the world right above where this woman died. The luminous figure brought the ghost child close to the fragment. The object disintegrated into a soft swirl of golden dust. The baby of light smiled faintly. The mother lifted her face toward Rosora, and though no voice came, Rosora understood. "Thank you." The figure dissolved slowly. First the baby, then the woman's arms, then her body, fading into scattered sparks that drifted upward and vanished among the treetops. Silence returned. Rosora collapsed to her knees. Tobias knelt beside her, gripping her shoulders. "Are you all right?" She nodded weakly. "The girl is free now, truly free." Tobias exhaled. "So it's over?" Rosora shook her head. "No. Without the fragment, Beatrice will hear everything now. Everything. Even what others can't." "Is that good?" Tobias asked. "I don't know," Rosora murmured. "But I know the girl will call for me. We need to return." They walked back through the forest. The woods seemed calmer now, as if relieved. The air felt lighter. The path opened for them with ease. Yet a whisper lingered at the edge of Rosora's mind, a warning, almost gentle. When a gift awakens, the world rearranges itself. When Rosora and Tobias emerged from the forest, dawn was softening the sky into a pale blue. Santa Beatriz plantation rested quietly ahead of them, but Rosora felt the opposite inside her chest. Something there was already awake, calling for her, tugging her back toward the big house like an unseen thread. As they approached, a distant cry echoed from inside. Not a cry of hunger or pain, a startled cry. Rosora hurried her pace. Senora Mariana appeared at the doorway, hair undone, face pale with exhaustion. "Rosora, thank heavens." She didn't sleep. She keeps waking as if she hears someone calling, and earlier, she looked at the ceiling, smiled, then cried. "I don't understand." Rosora stepped inside, heart tight. "May I see her, Senora?" Mariana nodded, desperate. In the nursery, Beatriz was restless, her eyes wide and alert, as if following something invisible drifting across the room. When Rosora entered, the child turned immediately. A tiny but unmistakable smile formed. She stretched out her arms. Rosora lifted her gently. The baby nestled against her shoulder, calmer, but suddenly stiffened, staring at the far corner of the room, at nothing but shadow. She reached for it. Mariana whispered, "What is she seeing?" Rosora answered softly, "Maybe she's not seeing. Maybe she's hearing." "Hearing what, Rosora?" Rosora didn't reply. Instead, she snapped her fingers softly beside the baby's ear. Beatrice turned toward the sound, delighted, then immediately looked toward the window as a distant, faint singing rose from the slave quarters, the low song of a tired woman beginning her day. Beatrice listened with full attention. "But that's so far," Mariana whispered. "How can she hear it?" Rosora held the baby close. She didn't say the truth aloud. Without the fragment, Beatrice heard the world fully, including the things the world preferred to forget. Over the next days, the strange signs multiplied. Beatrice woke moments before thunder cracked across the sky, as if she heard the clouds rumbling before anyone else. She cried softly when a slave woman held in her tears. She laughed in empty hallways where, decades before, enslaved children had once played in secret. One evening, Coronel Damasceno stormed into the room. "Mariana, what's this I hear from the quarters? That the child hears too much. That she hears people's thoughts. I won't have superstition in my house." Rosora stiffened as his gaze turned to her. "You," he said, "are around the girl too often. If I discover any strange prayers or tricks—" She bowed her head, but her voice stayed steady. "I only care for her, Coronel, as the Senora ordered." He glared at her, then finally turned away. "Tomorrow I'll call the priest from town. The child will be blessed. If something is wrong, we'll see." Mariana grew pale. Rosora felt cold in her bones. Later, in the slave quarters, Sibila waited at the door like a shadow. "The forest gave back what belonged to it," she said. "I felt it." The silence changed. Rosora sat beside her, exhausted. But now the girl is open. She hears everything, even what's not meant to be heard. Sibila gave a dry, humorless laugh. Children sometimes come into the world with crossroads ears. But it's the ones raising them who decide what becomes of that gift, not the coronel, not fear. Rosora listened carefully. "He wants the priest." "Let him come," Sabila shrugged. "Sometimes even prayers from far-off hands help steady what we can't explain. Just don't let anyone call her a curse. Curses don't hear the cries of the forgotten." And Rosora understood the mission falling upon her shoulders. Beatrice's gift could expose them, save them, doom them, or free them. But a test was coming sooner than anyone expected. Dark clouds gathered above the plantation, heavy, swollen, carrying more than storm water. Something was approaching, something that would put the gift, and all of them, to the test. The storm arrived on a night thick with heat. Hours passed in suffocating stillness until, at last, the sky snapped open. A brilliant flash, a thunderclap that shook the windows of the big house. But Beatrice had awakened long before. The baby tossed in her crib, staring toward the window, then toward the doorway as if hearing footsteps, urgent voices, shadows moving outside. Senora Mariana, exhausted in her chair, startled awake. "What is it, my angel? What are you hearing?" Beatrice didn't have the words, only fear. She pointed toward the lower grounds, toward the slave quarters, the barns, the old storage shed. At that same moment in the slave quarters, no one noticed the small flame wavering inside the pasol, the storage shed packed with sacks, tools, and dry wood. A lamp had been left hanging, swaying in the draught of an open crack in the wall. Beatrice heard the flame before anyone knew it existed. She began to cry, loud, desperate. Rosora, asleep in the quarters, woke with a sharp jolt. A pull inside her chest, unmistakable. She ran barefoot through the muddy yard, rain beginning to fall, and climbed the big house steps 2 at a time. Inside, the Senora paced with the baby, frantic. "She won't calm down, Rosora. I feel like she's scared of something, but I don't know what." Rosora touched her forehead gently to the child's, and instantly she heard it too, a faint crackle, a whisper of fire biting at wood. Her breath caught. "Senora, the storage shed." "What?" "The shed. Something's wrong. The girl is hearing it." Mariana froze. "You're sure?" "Yes." Rosora had no doubt. Then the coroner appeared, irritated. "What's all this noise? The child won't sleep?" Rosora stepped forward, a bravery she didn't know she had. "Coronel, forgive me, but your daughter is hearing something dangerous from the shed. Something's wrong." He stared, stunned at her audacity. Mariana pleaded softly, "Damasceno, just send someone. If it's nothing, we'll rest easier." The storm growled again outside. Finally, the coroner relented. "Fine, I'll send Tobias. But if this is nonsense..." Minutes later, Tobias sprinted across the yard and flung open the shed door. His shout pierced the storm. "Fire! There's fire in the shed!" The lamplight had begun to eat into the rafters. Smoke curled upward. Another minute or two and half the plantation would have burned. The shed, the stable, maybe even the slave quarters. Men rushed to help, dousing flames with buckets and soaked cloths as rain pounded the roof. From the window, Rosora and Mariana watched shapes moving through smoke. And little by little, Beatrice stopped crying, her small body relaxing against her mother. When the coroner returned, drenched and pale, he did not look like the same man. "The shed almost caught fire," he admitted quietly. If Tobias hadn't found it. His eyes moved to his daughter. Calm now, simply tired. Then he looked at Rosora, a long, silent moment. "How did you know?" Rosora inhaled slowly. Everything depended on her answer. "I didn't know, Coronel, she did. The girl hears what we can't. Maybe it's God's way of protecting your house." Silence. Heavy. Waiting. At last the coroner lowered his gaze. "Then let God protect it. And from now on, no one speaks of curses. Not here. Not in the quarters. And you," he nodded at Rosora, "stay close to the child. If God chooses to use a slave's ears and a child's gift to guard this place, I won't stand in the way." Mariana broke into quiet tears. Beatrice laid her head on her mother's shoulder and drifted into the calmest sleep she'd had in days. Years passed, and stories of the Signora's daughter spread softly across Santa Beatriz. They said Beatrice sensed sorrow before anyone shed a tear, that she heard whispered truths and quiet joys. She grew up listening to the sing-song voices of the quarters, the hidden laughter, the pain no one dared name. And always by her side walked Rosora, steady, patient, with the silent blessing of the spirit the forest had once refused to release. On that plantation, where so many voices had been silenced, an unexpected gift opened the smallest window, a window through which the unheard could finally be noticed. Because sometimes the impossible happens not to challenge reason, but to remind us that no silence is truly complete.